The idea that the central bankers are going places they have never been before. Are they promising too much?
Well, there are two issues. First, it is indeed the case that central banking today is sailing in uncharted waters, which means there are risks. And if there are risks, as a sailor you would know that you need to ask yourself, if I need to go back and the storm is too big or too little or coming from right or left, do I know how I go back? This is the reason why everyone talks about the issue of we need to know whether there is an exit, whether it ends, etc. And that's above and beyond the question of is today the time to have easy monetary policy, and I think that when there is a global slowdown, clearly we need to have expensive policy, but we need to recognize that those are also risky actions.
Is it so risky now that it could potentially be sowing the seeds for the next bubble?
Yes, but the recognition that it might sow a seed for the next bubble requires us to make sure that it is not happening. And I believe that those central bankers, with a great communication mechanism that they have among themselves, are aware of all of these issues. It will be a mistake to think that it is a panacea and that any one of them enjoys. Let's face it, if you ask each and every central banker, do you enjoy to operate in an environment of zero interest rate? They will say, of course not. I wish I could have a way in which I can raise interest rates at some stage.
Go back
and
to the
lower
old-fashioned way.
Of course,
yeah.
Of course. So that's why it is very important that we recognize that we are in abnormal times. And the fact that we are focusing so much on central banking, where the problems are elsewhere, in the budget, in structural measures, that's another risk. We are taking them off the hook. Those who need to do the job, those who need to put the budget into serious, responsible framework, those who need to do reform in the financial system and in the labor market and the like, should not be taken off the hook by saying we have a central bank that is solving all of the problems. The role of central banking today is to provide oxygen for a period of transition during which something else is being done. If something else is not done, then we will sow the next crisis.
So are you saying that central bankers now are diving too far deep into the realm of fiscal policy?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. But I do know that the paralysis in several places in the world, and Washington is just one of them, and we are sitting in Washington, is a very bothersome phenomenon. The big elephant is in Washington, not in the Fed.
Yeah, well, speaking of the Fed, we do have a major question coming up, and that is who will be the next Fed chairman? Ben Bernanke set to end his term 2014. Do you have any ideas of who you might like to see take over?
Well, I think what is important to recognize is that in so many places in the world, this year and next year is a period where the leadership of central banks is changing. In the UK, Mark Carney comes in instead of Mervyn King. That at least we know the name. In the US, there will be a new governor. In Japan, we just have had a new governor. So the issue is, however, not just what is the name of the person, but what's the characteristics of monetary policy. I really hope that we will not fall into the mistake of saying the old textbooks can be thrown away and let's invent a new economic theory. I believe some old chapters may find themselves handy in the next phase. So let's not forget the lessons of history. If you flood the market with liquidity, that liquidity must go somewhere, either into the shadow banking area or into bubbly effects in the other parts of the economy. So it's good for oxygen for a short term, but something else has to be done. And
speaking of more immediate crisis, I also want to get your thoughts on Cyprus and the impact that it's going to have, a lasting impact perhaps on the European banking system and on Europe in general.
Well, you see, Cyprus is such a small island, and everyone says, how come it became so important? Unfortunately, one of the reasons it has become so important is that policy, in my judgment, policy mistakes have transformed a small, tiny island into a systemic issue. The way in which the original plan was attempted, in a way undercut the integrity of the concept of deposit insurance. And if the deposit insurance institution is in question mark, then it's not necessarily only in one island. It can be in Italy, it can be in Spain, etc. That's why it was so important that the authorities reversed course. But you know, if you go backward, you're left with memory, and as a result it is now critical that in each and every occasion it is emphasized Cyprus was an exception. It is something that will not repeat itself again, and you know, the test of words is in actions, and the test of actions is in doing, and you need to build another track record of credibility. So yes, Cyprus is just one thing. Europe is not out of the woods. Europe needs to restore growth. The restoration of growth is not just printing money, and restoration of growth is not just the fiscal side. There are a huge amount of structural impediments, productivity, and other elements that induce better economic growth.